There's a structure made from nothing more than clay, brick, air tunnels, and basic geometry. And it can drop indoor temperatures by nearly 20 degrees without electricity. No compressor, no refrigerant, no monthly power bill. And people living in some of the hottest deserts on Earth were using it over 2,500 years ago. Today, millions of homes spend thousands of dollars every year forcing heat out with machines that consume staggering amounts of electricity. Meanwhile, ancient builders in Persia solved the same problem using wind, water, pressure, and physics so simple a child could understand it. The strange part? Most people have never even heard the name. It's called a windcatcher, in Persian, a badgir. And once you understand how it works, modern air conditioning suddenly starts looking less like progress and more like profitable dependence. In the blistering deserts of ancient Iran around 500 BCE, temperatures regularly climbed above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Entire cities were surrounded by dry heat, so intense it could crack wood, warp leather, and turn stored water dangerously warm within hours. Yet travelers entering cities like Yazd described homes that felt mysteriously cool inside. Not cold, but dramatically cooler than the outside air. No electricity existed, no fans, no motors, just towers. Tall rectangular towers rising above rooftops with narrow openings pointed toward prevailing winds. From a distance, they looked almost decorative. But inside those towers, something remarkable was happening. Wind entering the upper vents accelerated downward through narrow shafts. As it moved, pressure changed. Heat dispersed. In many homes, the airflow passed across underground water channels called qanats, cooling the air even further before it entered living spaces. Ancient Persians had essentially engineered passive climate control centuries before modern thermodynamics even had a name, and they weren't alone. In North Africa, builders in Egypt used thick mud brick walls and rooftop ventilation channels to create temperature differences between shaded and sunlit sections of homes. In Rajasthan, India, entire palaces were designed with perforated stone facades called jalis that manipulated airflow while blocking direct solar radiation. Across the Arabian Peninsula, pearl divers and merchants built narrow alleyways and wind corridors specifically to funnel cooler evening air through dense urban centers. Different cultures, different languages, same discovery. Moving air changes temperature perception dramatically when combined with evaporation and thermal mass. That's convergent knowledge, and it usually means one thing: the method works. By the medieval period, Persian engineers had refined windcatcher designs into astonishingly sophisticated systems. Some towers had 4 directional vents, others had internal partitions that separated incoming cool air from outgoing warm air. Wealthier homes connected these towers to underground cisterns where water evaporation amplified cooling even further. Imagine standing inside one of those homes in 1300 AD. Outside, desert winds blast across sunburned streets, sand scrapes against stone walls, heat radiates from every surface. But inside, the air smells faintly of wet earth and cooled clay. Curtains move gently without fans. Water stays drinkable. People sleep comfortably through temperatures that would overwhelm many modern buildings during a power outage. And this wasn't primitive improvisation. In 1968, researchers from the University of Tehran began formally studying surviving windcatchers in Yazd and Kashan. Decades later, engineers at MIT and the University of Arizona analyzed similar passive cooling systems and confirmed measurable indoor temperature reductions ranging from 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit under the right conditions. No miracle, just physics. Hot air rises, cooler, dense air sinks. Moving air accelerates evaporation from skin. Thick, earthen materials absorb daytime heat slowly and release it gradually after sunset. Ancient builders understood these principles intuitively, long before laboratories gave them technical vocabulary. And once you understand that, something uncomfortable becomes obvious. Modern cooling systems aren't just expensive to buy. They're designed around continuous dependence. Compressors fail, refrigerant leaks, filters clog, parts become obsolete. Entire industries depend on replacement cycles. But a clay tower, a shaded airflow channel, a passive cooling wall, those can function for generations. Think about that for a moment. In parts of Iran, some windcatchers have survived for over 700 years, 7 centuries, long enough to outlive kingdoms, currencies, empires, and entire industries. Meanwhile, the average lifespan of a modern residential air conditioning unit in the United States is roughly 12 to 15 years. That difference matters, especially when global air conditioning demand is expected to triple by 2050, according to the International Energy Agency. Entire electrical grids are already straining during summer heat waves. Cities experience rolling blackouts because millions of machines all fight the same battle at the same time. Ancient desert builders solved much of that problem with geometry, not patents, not subscriptions, not proprietary refrigerants, geometry. And if these kinds of forgotten systems matter to you, subscribe and ring the bell, because knowledge like this survives only when people keep digging it back out of the sand. By the early 1900s, many traditional cooling techniques began disappearing from modern architecture. Colonial development favored concrete boxes and imported mechanical systems. International corporations pushed standardized cooling equipment into rapidly expanding cities. Glass skyscrapers replaced climate-adapted buildings. Passive cooling became associated with poverty instead of engineering intelligence. Then air conditioning became one of the most profitable industries on Earth, and that's when the boardrooms noticed. The global air conditioning industry is now worth well over $150 billion annually. Some estimates push the broader HVAC market beyond $300 billion. When maintenance contracts, refrigerants, installation services, and replacement components are included, that's not a small market. That's infrastructure-level money. And infrastructure industries rarely reward permanence. A passive cooling tower built from brick and lime plaster doesn't generate recurring revenue. It doesn't require annual servicing contracts. It doesn't consume electricity every month. And most importantly, it doesn't lock homeowners into endless upgrade cycles. A $3,000 central air system that fails every decade is economically preferable to a low-cost cooling method that survives for generations. That doesn't require some secret conspiracy meeting in a dark room. Markets don't work like spy movies. Suppression is usually quieter than that, more boring, more invisible. It happens through incentives. Building codes prioritize sealed mechanical environments. Developers maximize short-term construction speed using concrete and glass designs that trap heat aggressively. Advertising convinces consumers that comfort must come from machines. Universities increasingly teach climate control through industrial systems rather than regional architecture adapted to local environments. And gradually, older knowledge starts sounding primitive, even when it works astonishingly well. Look closely at modern eco-cooling products, and you'll notice something strange. Many expensive passive cooling systems now marketed as cutting-edge sustainable technology are simply modified versions of ancient ideas. Ventilated roofs, thermal chimneys, earth tubes, cross-ventilation channels, evaporative cooling walls, old ideas, new packaging, sometimes with a 1,200% markup. Think about every hot room you've ever struggled to cool. Garages, workshops, cabins, tiny homes, greenhouses, sheds, upstairs bedrooms that trap heat all summer long. Now imagine if even a fraction of that heat could be reduced without continuously feeding electricity into a compressor. That's where the science becomes impossible to ignore. Modern air conditioners work through vapor compression refrigeration. They force refrigerant through pressure cycles to absorb and release heat. Effective? Absolutely. But also energy intensive, especially during extreme temperatures when grids are already overloaded. Windcatchers and passive cooling systems attack the problem differently. Instead of forcing heat out mechanically, they prevent heat accumulation in the first place, while increasing airflow and thermal exchange naturally. It's less like fighting a fire, and more like preventing sparks from landing. Researchers at the University of Nottingham studied traditional Middle Eastern cooling towers in the early 2000s and found that properly designed passive ventilation systems dramatically reduced indoor temperatures, while cutting energy demand by up to 80% in some climates. 80%. Let that sink in. In some modern experimental buildings inspired by Persian windcatchers, indoor airflow velocities increased enough to improve human comfort, even when actual air temperatures remained relatively high. That matters because the human body doesn't experience temperature alone. It experiences heat transfer, sweat evaporation, air movement across skin. A moving 88-degree airflow can feel dramatically cooler than stagnant 82-degree air trapped inside a sealed room. Ancient builders understood comfort better than many modern systems engineers, and the deeper you go into this subject, the stranger it gets. Traditional Persian architecture often combined multiple passive systems together. Windcatchers connected to subterranean water channels. Thick earthen walls delayed daytime heat penetration. Courtyards created pressure differences. Shaded gardens increased humidity slightly, enhancing evaporative cooling. Entire cities were engineered around airflow patterns. Meanwhile, modern cities increasingly trap heat with asphalt, steel, dark roofing materials, and reflective glass. Urban heat islands can raise temperatures by 7 degrees Fahrenheit or more compared to surrounding rural areas. Then companies sell increasingly powerful cooling systems to compensate for buildings designed without climate intelligence in the first place. That cycle is incredibly profitable. If you've watched this far, you already understand more about passive cooling history than most people designing modern suburban housing developments. Subscribe and share this, because buried engineering knowledge only survives when ordinary people start comparing notes again. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The technology itself was never lost. It was priced out of visibility. Luxury resorts in Dubai now quietly incorporate windcatcher-inspired architecture. High-end eco-resorts in Arizona use thermal chimney systems based on ancient desert principles. Billion-dollar sustainable architecture firms repackage airflow management techniques known to Persian builders before the fall of the Roman Republic. Same physics, different branding. But once you understand the principles, you don't need a million-dollar architectural firm. You can start applying this knowledge yourself with materials from a hardware store, and the total cost is probably lower than your last electricity bill. Here is exactly what to do. And it's almost insultingly simple. You do not need to rebuild your entire house into an ancient Persian palace. You just need to borrow the physics. Start with airflow. The cheapest version of this system can be built using a vertical vent pipe, reflective insulation, a shaded air intake, and basic thermal separation. Most materials are available at Home Depot, Lowe's, rural hardware stores, or online. A basic setup usually costs between $25 and $60 depending on size. First, get a length of 6-inch or 8-inch PVC pipe or lightweight metal ducting. For a small shed or workshop, about 8 feet works well. For larger rooms, taller vertical pipes create stronger airflow because rising hot air generates more pressure difference. That pressure difference is the entire trick. Next, create 2 openings. One low intake opening positioned in shade if possible, and one high exhaust opening where hot air naturally accumulates. Hot air wants to rise. You're simply giving it an escape route. That's all a thermal chimney really is. Now here's where ancient desert builders became geniuses. Before incoming air enters your room, run it through a cooler zone if possible. This can be as simple as routing intake air through shaded pipe buried 1 to 2 feet underground. Soil temperatures remain dramatically cooler than surface air during hot afternoons. Even shallow burial can noticeably reduce intake temperatures. If underground piping isn't possible, place the intake near damp surfaces, shaded brick, clay containers filled with water, or vegetation. Evaporation changes everything. As water evaporates, it absorbs heat energy from surrounding air. Ancient Persians amplified this effect using qanats and underground reservoirs. You're recreating the same principle on a smaller scale. Inside the room, place airflow paths strategically. Don't block ventilation with clutter. Hot, stagnant corners trap heat aggressively. Small directional openings matter more than most people realize. Now let's talk about radiant heat. This is the part almost nobody explains correctly. In many homes, heat isn't just coming from air temperature. It's coming from solar radiation striking roofs and walls directly. That energy transfers inward for hours, which means reducing solar absorption can massively reduce indoor temperatures before cooling even becomes necessary. A reflective radiant barrier installed beneath roofing material can reduce attic temperatures by 20 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit in some climates. Even a low-cost reflective tarp positioned above a sun-exposed roof with an air gap underneath can create measurable reductions. Not glamorous, but effective. Traditional desert structures often used white lime coatings for exactly this reason. High reflectivity, lower heat absorption. The science hasn't changed in 2,000 years. For extremely dry climates, you can take this further by adding a simple evaporative stage. A damp, porous clay pot or wet burlap positioned near intake airflow creates additional cooling through evaporation. The incoming air should feel slightly cooler and softer within minutes. Not ice cold like compressor AC, but dramatically more comfortable, especially during grid failures or extreme heat emergencies. A mechanic outside Phoenix tested a modified passive cooling setup in his detached garage during a July heat wave in 2023. Outdoor temperatures reached 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the garage, after adding reflective roofing material, shaded intake ventilation, and a vertical thermal exhaust pipe, interior temperatures dropped roughly 14 degrees compared to surrounding structures nearby. 14 degrees? That difference can determine whether a space feels survivable or unbearable. And here's the beautiful part. There are almost no moving components, no compressor, no refrigerant leak, no circuit board waiting to fail, just airflow, heat transfer, shade, evaporation, thermal mass. The same forces ancient civilizations mastered long before modern corporations started billing humanity monthly for comfort. For camping setups, smaller versions can cool tents using reflective tarps, shaded airflow tunnels, and simple battery-powered fans to accelerate convection slightly. For tiny homes, combining earth tubes with rooftop exhaust vents creates surprisingly effective passive circulation. For greenhouses, upper vent placement alone can prevent catastrophic heat buildup. Total investment for a basic home setup? Usually under $60. Compare that to central air installations that regularly exceed $8,000 to $15,000 before maintenance costs even begin. Roman desert outposts understood this. Persian engineers understood this. North African builders understood this. Indian stone craftsmen understood this. Your great-grandparents probably understood parts of it too. But somewhere along the way, comfort stopped being treated as a design problem and became a subscription service. A multi-hundred billion dollar industry depends on people believing cooling only comes from expensive machines. Yet the underlying physics remains completely indifferent to branding, patents, or advertising campaigns. Hot air still rises. Shade still matters. Evaporation still absorbs heat. Geometry still controls airflow. This knowledge never vanished. It was buried beneath convenience, marketing, and planned dependence. But buried knowledge has a strange habit of resurfacing when systems become too fragile, too expensive, or too centralized to trust forever. And that moment may already be arriving. Because chemistry doesn't care about brand strategy. And nature has never charged a licensing fee. Every share cracks the wall they spent billions building. Every subscription keeps this channel digging deeper into the vaults they thought were sealed forever. The next vault opens soon, and what's inside might completely change the way you think about water itself.